Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. This is the show and it's time for another Sit and Talk. This is the show where you ask me anything about anything, wargaming, business, politics, religion even. So if you're easily offended by any of those topics, especially wargaming, and particularly religion, of course, then please do not watch this show, because I'm just going to talk about anything, and I answer the questions that you give me, and I give my opinions on it. So that's really all there is to it. If you want your question or comment answered, make sure you leave a comment below. And then I use the comments from this week to answer next week's. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, don't leave a comment. Click a link in the video description, and that'll take you to the place where you leave the comment. It's just easier to print off that way. And then, of course, while you're there, thumb up any comments that you would like me to answer. And don't thumb down the ones that you don't. Just thumb up the ones. Let's just all be nice. And then what I do is I answer the top 10 questions, and then just random questions after that. Let's jump right into this. Locarta. Hi Matt, regarding custom models and models named after current or ex-mini wargamers, I have but one request. A custom orc warboss that looks like Dan, including the beard. That would be pretty cool. And maybe once we actually go to collect an orc force, we'll do that. I know we kind of have an existing orc force, but it's not big enough and not fully painted, and so we'll definitely want to add on to it. So maybe we'll have to get a Dan model. For added glory, you can also replace an attack squig with Dan's ultimate creation, the Beard Llama. Gross out your opponent. Dynamix. Hiya Matt, how come Steve doesn't wear mini wargaming t-shirts? You've got to sort him out. Vault member for life. I don't know. It's not required for people to wear t-shirts. We used to require it, kind of, because we were actually trying to sell them. We still sell them. If you go to miniwargaming.spreadshirt.com, you can buy these shirts in all sorts of different colors and sizes. But we just don't sell very many of them. And so we've just come to the conclusion that it's kind of, you know, we'll sell them because some people are going to want them, and other than that, who cares? And so don't really care if they wear them. I wear them because that's all the shirts I own. I do have a $50 gift card to Mark's Work Warehouse that I was given for my birthday. So I should probably go there and buy some other shirts too. Role-playing gamer. I think we all know where mini wargaming is going to be in 10 years. Dave dresses up like a samurai, warning his foes of the coming danger of his future 50,000 points of Chaos Space Marines. Steve finally gets a mini wargaming shirt. Wow, 2 people in a row. And High Fleet Karn gets too big and eats the mini wargaming building. Yes, that is quite a possibility. That would be kind of fun to actually like decorate the building like it was the interior of a hive ship or the interior of a Space Marine thing or whatever. But yeah. Saveldlium. Hello, sir. After watching Storms of Ixia, I have some things I would like to ask and share with you, Matt. 1. It is to date the best campaign mini wargaming has. I agree. I think it was the best that we produced. And the ambience is back in the story time. Thank you. 2. You have models that change their appearance from what happens in the story. Brilliant. That is a must-stay for future campaigns. I can't guarantee that. We just kind of really got into certain of the characters, and like Steve really wanted to update Khrushchev's models, and so it just worked out that way. I don't think that's going to be a regular thing, though. Sorry to disappoint. 3. If you do not do this already, then please start immediately. You are creating a universe with your own characters, lore, and story that could potentially be bigger than you can imagine right now. So what I would like is that the lore does not get compromised. So you need to keep track of your characters and other stuff after each campaign. Yeah, I know what you mean by that, and I do have a bunch of documents from all the campaigns that I do have, and keeping track of who's dead, who's alive, what's happened to them, and all of that. Eventually, we'll probably have to compile it into more of like a singular document. I know like book writers will do things like that, because you eventually create so much that you can contradict yourself. Like heck, you see our authors do that all the time, and companies do that all the time, where they contradict themselves. Games Workshop included, although Games Workshop has the advantage when they contradict themselves and just saying, well, the Imperium got it wrong, because they write all their codexes almost like it's written by somebody from the Imperium, and so they could just say that they got their information wrong. So it's like, yeah, it's always been this way. It's not retconned, it's just always been this way. The Imperium just learned more about it. So that's kind of fun excuse to do that, although we all know it's just retconning, which is perfectly fine. I think retconning is okay. It can disappoint people, but sometimes you need to make alignments to make it continue working. M Green 1211, a religion question. Rut-row. It actually says Rut-row there. I'm not trying to offend, just really interested in the Mormon religion. Why do Mormons call themselves Christians? I know the answer you're going to say, because it is most likely the same as all my Mormon friends tell me, but it seems like the beliefs of the LDS Church are so unique and different from the beliefs of all other Christian religions that Mormons would not want to be lumped together with the others. I can see what you're saying there, that we're different, but we want to be called the same thing. It's not so much that we want to be called Christians in the sense that don't call me Mormon, call me a Christian. That's not so much it. It's more just we want people to really understand that we believe in Jesus Christ. And that's what a Christian fundamentally is. And you can disagree in a lot of the nature of that. You can disagree a lot with what that implies, but that's just more just what we're trying to say, because a lot of people had the misunderstanding that we did not. And that's just more why. It's more like an emphasis on like we do believe in Jesus Christ. And so I think that's why you see a lot of that emphasis over the past decade of being Christian. So yeah, there's a lot of differences between religions. I agree with that, especially between ours and others. But yeah, I think that's the best answer I could give. Is more just, I think it's to clear up the misconception that we aren't, essentially, and just so people understand. Because for a long time it was like we were just called Mormons, and nobody actually knew the name of the church, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Well, obviously his name's in there, so we're Christians. It was more just called the Mormon Church and the Mormon this and the Mormon that, and so just trying to make sure people understand is really all it is. Crownblade, hi Matt, will you guys be doing campaigns for other games besides 40K? Yes. I know that Ash has been working on a War Machine narrative campaign, a little different format than the 40K narrative campaigns, but different games will require different formats, and experimenting with different things is of course what we want to do. Man, I'm itchy, for some reason just itchy on my chest. Is it dry in here? Anyway, so you will be seeing that eventually. I know they have all their preliminary stuff done for it. It's been taking a little longer to get it going, but that's because he's been super busy with other stuff too, and just getting everybody together to do it. Fantasy, we don't have any plans. Like next week we're going to start doing a fantasy narrative campaign, but I can see that eventually happening as well. So yeah, I would say yes is the answer to that. Remember, we just started narrative campaigns like 6 months ago. It hasn't been that long that we've been doing it, and that's not that long. In business life, 6 months is not that long. And so we're still experimenting with them. We're still kind of figuring them out and finding what people like and don't like. So 40K is a good place to do all that experimenting because it's, of course, our largest audience. Also, what are your thoughts on the new End Times campaign and event for fantasy? I think it's a great idea. I haven't really read any of it. I do want to. I just haven't had a chance to yet. Just kind of continuing the fluff, continuing the lore and the story. I think overall it can bring an infusion of newness to the game. Because I know fantasy sales aren't as good as 40K. It's hard for us to look anecdotally. Like you can't look at your local store and be like, yeah, nobody plays fantasy, therefore fantasy is not popular. It's like, no, you can't do that. You have to look at it on the global scale, and you'll have pockets of areas that play some games over others. But yeah, fantasy's definitely declined in popularity compared to 40K over the past couple decades. Like I think it used to be the bigger one, and now 40K is by far. And so kind of infusing it with some newness, like continuing the story, is a great idea. I do wish that they would also advance a bit of the story for 40K as well. Maybe they will eventually, once they're done updating all the books, who knows. Scary Scoo. Hey Matt, with the return of Warhammer Fantasy, have you considered doing narrative campaigns in the fantasy universe? So I'll skip that question because I already talked about that. Vault member for life, though. I'm going to mention that you put that. Thank you. Miso. Can't wait for the first Warhammer Fantasy battle campaign. Wow. We just started Warhammer Fantasy, and now you guys are on my case for fantasy campaigns. It's like, you'll get them. Don't worry. Don't worry. You won't have to bug me for those. Those are going to come. It's just so funny. Now everybody's going to bug me for whatever they want, thinking that if you bug me enough, then I'll eventually do it. What happened with the fantasy is actually you bugged me enough that and I use the word bug. You kept bringing it up, and that's fine. I have nothing against that whatsoever. It was brought up so many times that I finally, when the time was right, when we realized that Ash had some time, I looked at the stats and looked at our previous fantasy stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, they did have the views to merit bringing it back now. I always knew I was going to bring it back. It was always a question of when. Tau drone controller. Mork is the mechs, Gork are the knobs. I guess you can remember M for mechs is Mork, Mork and mechs, Gork is knobs. So that's a good way to remember that. Benoslav. I will just sit silently in the shadows of the vault. I'm not going to cancel my subscription. And wait until you are ready to maybe expand into historical war games. At that point, I will comment on every video and end every comment with, "Bolt action must be covered." Here's a little challenge for you, Matt. Which historical figure's catchphrase is that a paraphrase loose of? Bolt action must be covered? I have no idea. Not very good at history. If you ever have an hour or two of free time on your hands, check out the Beasts of War demo game of that system. The mechanics used therein are so interesting, easy, and intuitive at the same time. I don't have the money or time to buy, assemble, and paint for 2 systems simultaneously, and 40K has a magnitude of players more to play against, so I'll stick to it for now. But I'm very enthusiastic to get into that one as well, as soon as I earn enough to commission paint an army for that system. I can see in the future us covering historical gaming. Now, when I say in the future, I don't mean next year. I mean like 10 years from now, I could see us having some branch of our company that takes care of historical miniature gaming, because it is actually very big. It's just so little crossover between historical gamers and, I guess I'll say, fictional war gamers, where, not that the war gamers themselves are fictional, but that where they play games like 40K and Fantasy and War Machine and Infinity and all these games in fictional universes, as opposed to the ones who are doing reenactments and stuff, because they do draw different types of crowds. And I don't really understand the historical wargaming crowd because I haven't immersed myself in it, and I'm not really interested in it. But me personally not being interested in it doesn't mean that it won't ever happen for the business, because if I see a market that needs to be served with this content in a way to grow our vault and to grow our business, you can bet that I'll go for it. I'll just have to make sure that whoever is hired to take care of that will be a great personality who is super into it and who has a lot of knowledge on that. So I would say you can probably count on that eventually happening, assuming that we continue to grow, of course. Bilbo the Monkey. Hi Matt, love the Sit and Talks, probably my most watched show on mini wargaming. Thanks. Well, thank you. I have 2 quick questions. First, I'll ask this here since I don't know where else. Would it be possible or probable for Steve to do some painting tutorials? From what I've gathered, he has 20 years experience and painted a massive number of Eldar in 1 month. Chris's videos are great, but I'll take all the help I can get. Maybe eventually. Right now he is busy editing all our videos, which is a big job, and appearing in like every gaming system. He's been in our 40K campaigns, 40K battle reports, Dave's Who Would Win series, his Tactica series and review series. Now he's doing Fantasy with Ash. He was doing War Machine in the League. Like he's everywhere. He's a great asset. Just covering there. And since battle reports are so important to make sure we're covering, like for Fantasy and War Machine, especially because now we have that being a new thing. I think we need him more there. But you're right. He is a good painter, and so maybe eventually we'll try his hand at painting videos. We'll see. Second question, do you think you'll ever remove the out-of-stock store page for Mini Wargaming? LOL. I just noticed everything is still listed from the store days, even though it is long gone. Thanks for the great videos and content, proud Vault member. The reason I didn't remove all the products and just had them out of stock is because a lot of them, if not all of them, are in the Google search engines. And so I still wanted the store to be listed there. Like if somebody's searching for Space Marines, for example, I still want there to be that much more chance that they find our website, because then when they find our website, yeah, they'll see that it's out of stock, but then they might discover that we have videos, and that'll be more customers. So it was more a search engine thing. Just all of a sudden having thousands of pages disappear off your website, all of a sudden those aren't in the search engines anymore, and so that can affect that. Eventually, of course, they'll be useless, as maybe already they are, as there's less and less traffic to them, because Google's smart in a. It's not that we're spamming the search engines. Those pages are there and it's legit, and people come to it and they want them to see that they can't get that product anymore. So it's not a spamming thing as much as it just is, why not? It was there. The search engine rankings were built up for it. So why not have it feed something else as well? So yeah, so maybe eventually. Ritek. Super heavy walkers can move 12 inches in the movement phase unless specified otherwise. Unless I'm missing something, there is nothing that specifies otherwise. Well, if you go to the difficult terrain rules, it says that when you move through difficult terrain, you roll 2d6 and take your highest d6. They definitely, like they have the move through cover rule. Super heavy walkers by default have the move through cover rule. So why would they give them the move through cover rule if they're not going to be affected by difficult terrain? So you have to think of it that way too. So that's why we have that house rule there. You could be totally right. You could be right that they're just supposed to move 12 inches, but what's the move through cover rule for? For when they charge? It could be that. Just so they don't take dangerous terrain tests? It could be that. But I don't know. It just feels right when we play to make them still roll for it. Like they can get slowed down by a bunch of trees or a bunch of whatever, but still not slow down as much as a regular infantry. Uncle Willie. Hey Matt, have you ever played with or against demons? Oh yeah, lots of times. How do you feel about Demon Army now that that Grey Knights have their new codex aimed at them? The Grey Knights coming out didn't change how I feel about demons. They've always been an interesting army to play against. I either beat them horribly or they beat me horribly. It just depends on who's fielding them. They're obviously not one of the more powerful codexes, but they have some interesting combinations. And I'm not talking about the summoning spam. Like, there's that, but everybody knows about that, and hopefully most people will stay away from it. Love the shows and look forward to many more years of them. Regards, Uncle Willie. Well, thank you. Patrat123. On what you said, Matt, how part of the fun of the 40K fluff is the what-if aspect? That's what I love, too. But it's beyond that. It's that, for the most part, what is myth and legend for the population of the 41st millennium is myth and legend for the wargaming community, too. Yeah, it's true. I do like the open-ended fluff. Just having a conversation with Chris about that. Don't want Games Workshop to answer all the questions. I want them just to more advance it so that the questions can somehow evolve. Like the question of, will the Emperor come back? Like, you could bring the Emperor back, and the state of affairs in the Imperium, for game-wise, don't have to change very much. Like, obviously, it would be a huge change to advancing the story, but it's not like all of a sudden all your armies don't work and all your campaigns don't work, because all it means, it could be a simple advancement of he comes back, and there's a new crusade, and boom, that's where we are now. So all of a sudden there's new supplements, there's new models, and all sorts of stuff. It just, because why not, right? And it doesn't break anything that's already there, because the universe, the galaxy still continues going on. Like, we're talking a major scale here, and things that take just hundreds of years, if not thousands of years to come to pass. Dragon Apocalypse. Hi Matt, what will you do with the model of one of your main campaign characters if they die? I would suggest setting up a shelf or display case in your studio as a kind of memorial, so they will be in the background of all future bat reps. Yeah, it's funny now, once you kind of care enough about a character to actually create a sculpt of him or to make a conversion of him, you all of a sudden, what happens if they die? Well, I don't know the answer to that. Will we create a little thing, or just keep using them in battle reports because, you know, it's just a one-off battle report, not a campaign, and so let's use Khrushchev. We know he's Yarrick, but we'll call him Khrushchev just for fun. Or you can sell them on eBay. There's probably a fan out there that would love to reenact using the actual models. Yeah, that would be kind of fun. Alarath. Hello, Matthew. This is my first post. Well, welcome, Alarath. I just wanted to thank everyone at Mini Wargaming for the great products that you put out. I wanted to ask if you were going to review Spartan Games' new release Planetfall after it comes out in late October. I can definitely say that no. Not because I don't think it's good, but because I've talked about this in previous ones, we just can't cover other games right now. And that includes reviewing them, because it takes, some people are like, well, why don't you just review these games? Well, reviewing a game requires playing the game. Because I don't like reviews where they're like, here's the book. No, yeah, I like this part of it, even though they've never played it. Like when the Tyranid Codex came out, I did a first impressions video where we talked about what we thought about it, and then I saved the review for about a month later after I had played them a bunch of times. So in order to do a review, you really have to play. Also, how interested do you have for Planetfall? I hadn't even heard of it until you just mentioned it. And the upcoming release of DreamPod 9's second edition of Heavy Gear Blitz. No idea that was happening. I really don't keep up to date on news and rumors. Even keeping up to date on the Games Workshop news and rumors is something that I don't 100% do. I kind of have a general idea. I know Dark Eldar are coming out, or have already come out, in the process of coming out, and I know that the rumors of what's coming out next and all that, but I don't really delve into it deeply unless it's something I'm really interested in. Like once I start hearing the rumors of Necrons, of course, I'll be reading more about that. Monty Quack. Hey Matt, have you or anyone on the Mini Wargaming team ever been to Warhammer World in Nottingham? Well, I haven't. I know Dave hasn't. I wouldn't be surprised if Ash has been there, but he's back doing a battle report, so I can't ask him that. Chris, have you ever been to Warhammer World? Negative. Chris has not been. I highly doubt Steve has. Justin, most likely not. But Ash worked for Games Workshop for a very long time, for most of his adult life, actually. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all to hear that he'd been there. I am lucky enough to be a student who lives 10 minutes away from it, and it is such an amazing facility. Cool. Would love to see you guys go there, and I'm sure you would love it. Mini Wargaming team field trip, maybe? Vault member for life. The only problem with that is my wife's family is from England. So there's no way I could go without her coming. And that's not a problem, except that we have two little kids, with the third one on the way. And so that means it has to be timed in such a way that the kids can be left behind because they're definitely not coming, with the grandparents for like a week or two, and that's a long time. So it'd probably be a while before we can do that kind of thing. There's no way she'll let me go to England without her coming with me. It's just not going to happen. I got to have a really good business reason to go there without her, because she really wants to go there and visit with her family because she's not had a chance to do that. We'd love to see you guys go there, and I'm sure you would love it. Oh no, I already read that. Vault member for life. Shadow Ace 1124. Hey Matt, it has been a while since I last posted on one of your sit and talks. Love listening to your sit and talks to a point where I listen to them religiously, whether during work or painting some models. On to my comment. In one of the comments, it was mentioned that mini wargaming staff would be named characters in the mini wargaming Space Marine chapter. It'd be really funny to see Fireman Tim as a pyromancy, but it would be even funnier to see Joe's face on an Eldar Farseer's body, and with the marker Dave be depicted as a librarian. I'm sure Dave wouldn't mind having a Joe figure next to his picture of Joe if he still has it. He does still have it. Has it. I loved how the mini wargaming chapter turned out and would love to see it in full force and hope to see it in person and play against it one day. Keep up the good work with the narrative campaign, loving every moment of it, and with everything you do at mini wargaming. Thank you. Hawk 12. This is a feeler question for the scope of 40k gamers out there, so here goes. How well are counts as models received in the gaming scene, both in tournaments and pickup games? You're asking the wrong person what normal looks like in the miniature wargaming community. And the reason that you're asking the wrong person is because I'm in Welland, which is a population of 50,000 people. The next biggest city is St. Catharines with like 120,000, 150,000, something like that. And it's got a small store. The nearest store is like an hour away that actually has a good population of gamers. I don't go to tournaments. I don't go to other clubs. All of my gaming is done in a studio where people travel from distances to come and play against us. So it's not exactly normal. We play with all painted armies and with tons of really cool terrain, and that's not what you're normally going to see at a club. You're going to see terrain that's not as cool because it gets beaten up. You're going to see things that are unpainted and just assembled. You're going to see all sorts of stuff. So I really have no idea what normal is. What we accept, we don't mind counts as models as long as they make sense. It's like if you're talking WYSIWYG, there's a difference I say between WYSIWYG and counts as models. Like WYSIWYG is all about, you know, this, if this is a heavy flamer, this is a heavy flamer. You can't have it be a melta or whatever. And that we're, you know, we kind of go by that and don't at the same time because it's not a big deal. Counts as is where you're like, I've built this entire army. Well, Dave posted on Facebook an entire army that was Smurfs, like literally Smurfs from the TV show Smurfs. And they count as Ultramarines. Like, to me, that's the coolest thing ever. So why not do that? Or I bought an Imperial Guard army from somebody, and the Ogrins are actually ogres from fantasy, and they just did some modifications in that, so they count as the Ogrins. And so, to me, that's cool stuff. So, if you all of a sudden plop down an Orc army and you say it counts as Eldar, well, obviously that's not going to be very well accepted. But I'll continue your question. I asked because I'm a huge fan of conversions, and most of my inspiration in amassing an army is to bring into life those characters and creatures that do not possess an actual model, yet are closely tied to the identity of a specific faction or race. Now that's happening less and less frequently as Games Workshop has smartened up because of the whole chapter house thing, and is making sure that they don't release rules for a model before they have a model. But I know what you mean, like the Doom of Malantai and the Mycetic Explorers and all this different stuff that you had in the Tyranid Codex were good examples of that. Converted armies I think are the coolest part of this hobby when people do that. It's just so neat. So, but that's once again, I can't really tell you what normal looks like. I would assume that most people wouldn't mind conversions for the counts as stuff. Dark Mage 70. Hi Matt. Let me just get some water. I was wondering, as a fellow Tyranid player, I noticed you do not run a Swarm Lord at all. Is there a reason behind that? Rules too overpowered or too large of a point sink? He's just not that good. He seems good on paper. He can do spectacular things with his instant death in close combat, but for the most part, he just gets shot down. He's not fast. I think his main issue is he's too slow and lumbering. Not that he has any slow and purposeful rules. It's just he just moves the normal 6 inches. But when you have an army like the Tyranids, where Hormagaunts have their leaping bound, and you have your beasts, and you have flying monstrous creatures, you have all these ways to kind of get guys up faster. And then you have the Swarm Lord, who's supposed to be this awesome close combat guy, and he just can't really get there. And when he does, your opponent usually gets to choose who he fights, because he's so slow that they can stick whatever they want there, and they can choose something that would be better against him. So I don't know, I just don't ever find him useful. I still bring him in occasionally, though. Also on the subject, ever considered running a Trigon Prime with a Reaper of Obliterax, making him a real combat nightmare for your opponent? I think I've done that before. Perhaps even with a Miasma Cannon jumping up, spelling death to scouts or Tau Fire Warriors. Yeah, I thought I had done that before, at least once. Maybe just once, though, so you might not have seen it. Destroy Apathy. On a totally separate note to another comment I've posted, do you have any plans to extend your Shadows in the Warp series? Yes and no. More no than yes. It's one of those shows that I kind of experimented with, and it was fun to do, and it was well received. That's not really the issue. But we've just been so... narrative campaigns kind of happened around the same time, if I remember correctly. And so those have kind of taken more of a priority because I've written reports and stuff, like programmed reports to show me which content is drawing in more Vault members, and the narrative campaigns just have such a huge impact that I've been focusing more on that, and battle reports and all of that. So I say yes and no because I don't have plans right now, but it's not that I've canceled the show. There could be more installments later on. And then you talk about the Genestealer Cult. I do love the Genestealer Cult, and a little spoiler alert here. The next 40k campaign is going to involve Genestealer Cults, although not exactly the way that Genestealer Cults normally are done, but we'll be doing those soon. Uncle Willie, hey Matt again. Already commented, so I am sorry for that. I've noticed that a lot of players are rolling off the table. Well, I can understand when there is a lot of units on the table, a lot of table to roll on. How about making a rule saying if they roll the table, it counts as a miss or failed save? What do you think? I've always wanted to do that because I remember I think it was in 6th edition rulebook, there was actually like one of the side things where they made comment on that. It's like, hey, you could even have this rule. It wasn't an official rule, it's more just like for fun. But it just happens too often for me to make that rule, so we'll just be kind. Inquisitor Mikhail, hey Matthew, I highly recommend that you read the Silmarillion. Divided into 3 books, it tells the story of creation of Middle-earth, the Old Ages, the First Age of Elves, the war against Morgoth and Boglir, and the rise and fall of Numenor during the Second Age. Unlike Lord of the Rings, which follows a small part of the events of the end of the Third Age, the Silmarillion spans a vast time span, where time is measured by Elven standards. This gives Tolkien's world a place to expand into, its past, as much of Middle-earth's history as yet to be fully accounted. The story of the Children of Huron and the tale of Beren and Luthien are amazing. I've actually read the book Children of Huron. Yeah, it was very depressing, but it was good. I wish you well in your endeavors. Hail Elsa, blood for the blood chalice, there are no wolves on Fenris. Always angry all of the time. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more. The problem with the Middle-earth is that Tolkien is dead, and so and it was always kind of his creation, whereas like 40k, there's been so many authors have had their hands in it that it's more like a collective creation that's owned by a company who can kind of dictate its future. And so Middle-earth didn't really have that. And of course now there's been licensed out and there's been changes and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not the same. So I think Middle-earth has been a good foundation for other fantasy worlds. Tolkien really contributed a lot to kind of the way the orcs and elves feel today. I know they weren't his creation, but just the way he kind of depicted them really helped form the current view and fantasy of that kind of stuff. And so he's contributed a lot that way. But the world itself, just not as interested in, I'll be honest. I am interested in watching the movies, but I don't know, I've kind of grown out of it. Not that it's like for kids, but more just, you know, the more I learn about the 40k universe, the more I get into it. The more with Middle-earth, it's just, no, I'm not finding myself getting more into it. Flesh Prison 17. You guys always talk about chicken wings. I remember a show in which the entire mini wargaming were just sitting around eating chicken wings. It looked so bomb. However, I noticed the boxes had Chinese writing. What is this? Where do I get them? Do they sell them frozen? This store, there's a little Chinese restaurant across the road. And the previous owners, when they were the ones doing it, their chicken wings were the best chicken wings I've ever had. Now, they're just breaded with salt, and so I would create a sauce for them because I have a sauce that I really like. And to me, that was like the epitome of the best chicken wing ever. Now they have new owners and they're not as good. So, and I've tried chicken wings from other Chinese restaurants and they're just not the same. So unfortunately, that's gone. But oh well. I still enjoy chicken wings, it's just they're not as good. A Red Hunter. Hello, Matt. To give an answer to all the people that complain about you stacking a game in your favor, I have watched all the campaigns so far, and I groan when you win. But I want to see the next one, hoping that your opponent can pull a victory out of the bag. Or if Steve can roll better than one in those clutch moments. If you have an antagonist that never wins in the campaigns, it's going to make them boring. By having the antagonist win some, like the Tyrannus, it makes your viewers want to see the next mission and root more for the protagonist of the story. Keep up the good work. Yeah, it's going to happen, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. Creed, 3266. Hey, Matt, time some random quiz. Question 1. How many Vault members do you need to start doing X-Wing? Me and a group play 40k, start playing. More how if someone cover for you. I don't know if there'd be a hard number. It's more just an investment of time. Like if I'm putting X number of hours or money into covering a game, I want to make sure that that returns more than if I could put those hours elsewhere. And so, and you might think, well, then why not always just do 40k? It's because it's diminishing returns. Like if we put out 2 battle reports a week of 40k, that's great. If we put out a third, we notice an increase in Vault memberships. You put out a fourth, and all of a sudden you don't notice as much of an increase. You put out a fifth, and you don't notice as much of an increase. So there's that diminishing return. Whereas instead of putting out the fourth and the fifth, for example, and you cover a different game, that could pull in more Vault members than the fourth 40k one would be. And so it's really like that. It's more like a, will it do more than something else I would put it into? That's hard to really figure out because you have to build an audience as well. Like, of course, when we put up a 40k video, it's more popular than something else because for the past 7 years, we've been making 40k videos, so we've built a 40k audience. Whereas we haven't built as much of a War Machine audience or fantasy audience or Infinity audience. And so I know when we're putting up these War Machine videos, for example, they get way less views. But I'm okay with that because I see it as we're building up an audience. And so that's something that you have to do over the course of years. So it's more like in a year or two, if we would really be able to look and evaluate how our War Machine videos are doing. I don't think it'll ever be as popular as 40k, at least not in the near future, but it could still bring in enough that it's worth doing. So for X-Wing, there's no hard number that I would say I need this many Vault members because it's always, is there always going to be another thing that would be better to do? And I don't know. I'm not saying we'll never cover X-Wing. It's just my thoughts on it last time are that probably the X-Wing market is not as affluent as the market for 40k and fantasy. I know there's crossover, of course. There's people who play 40k who play X-Wing, myself included, but that's not always the case. And so you have to kind of think of that. Question 2, can you ask Ash, Steve, and Dave from 40k what pest would they have? What pest or what pet? And no, I can't ask them. That's the thing with the sit and talks. Everybody's kind of scattered doing their own thing, so I won't be able to necessarily ask questions unless it happens to be nearby. Question 3. Next campaign, Dan and Owen versus Ash and Steve. Dan. You mean Dan in Alberta and Owen who just moved out to Alberta? Versus Ash and Steve, and have some chaos from Dave and Nid overtake. Last voiceover like Rejects, maybe more an in-depth story. It's great, maybe doing Eye of the Turn, maybe fun, just my opinion. As always, happy wargaming. We'll have to see about that one. James Laws. Hi, Matt. Hi, James. A couple of questions for you today. First of all, a business question. I've noticed that generally there is no content put up at weekends. Have you considered hiring weekend staff? I think this would allow you to create more content without having to move or hire more full-time staff or move to another location. That's funny that you say that because I see how you have the impression that we don't have people working on the weekends because we don't post videos on the weekends. But you have to remember that our videos are not posted on the days that we create them. For example, we already have the 40k battle reports posted for the next 4 weeks. So every Monday when they come out, that's been played a month ago. Not on a Monday necessarily. We don't play our 40k narrative campaigns on a Thursday, and we don't play the War Machine on a Tuesday. We get stuff done ahead of time. So really, so we do have people working on Saturday. Not Sunday, but on Saturday. And so that does give access to the studio on those days. The reason you don't see them posted is twofold. One, Justin, who does the posting, works Monday to Friday. But that's not the full reason, because we could probably figure out a way to do it. It's more that up until now, we didn't have enough content to really have 6 days of content. We're just now getting to the point where it might make sense to switch to have a Saturday content as well. So, will it be better to do it on Saturdays? I don't know. We don't have any numbers for it because we've never really done it. Secondly, have you considered using Kickstarter or another crowdfunding site to fund new armies? I thought about it, but I don't think it'd be a good idea. The thing with Kickstarter and Indiegogo or any of those crowdfunding is no matter what happens, you're always expending a bit of goodwill. Now, goodwill in a company is something that's very hard to track because it's not something that's tangible. What it essentially is how much your viewers like you, and then how much you can get them to do stuff for you because they like you. And so you come up with a Kickstarter, and you have some people who will just contribute. They don't care at all about what the Kickstarter is about or what they're going to get in return. They just like you. They like the fact that you've been putting out content for them. They've enjoyed it so much that they feel some sort of connection. And so they just put the money out. And they're like, here you go. Thank you for being you. And but that expends goodwill, because then if the next week, which I obviously wouldn't do, we say, okay, now we're doing another Kickstarter, that same person probably wouldn't just go ahead and do it. Or if they would, and we did a third one a week after, they most likely wouldn't contribute because you've kind of used up that goodwill and you have to build it back up. And so doing regular Kickstarters, now I've seen companies like Cool Mini or Not pull it off, but that's because they use Kickstarter more like a pre-sell system, more than a, hey, we need your support. It's more like a, hey, we're coming out with a new game, here's the Kickstarter for it. So you can pre-order it and get all these cool cool bonuses for being part of the pre-orders. That's kind of the way that they use Kickstarter, and I think that's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But because they do it that way, it's not really expending goodwill as much, because people are, and they also have done it for so long now that people are just used to it. Whereas if we did it for new armies, it would come across as us begging for money in order to be able to get new armies for our videos. And so instead, we just kind of look at it more, how much are we making and how much can we budget to get armies? And that's working really well. So I don't think we'd ever get to the point to do Kickstarter for armies unless something really crazy happened. Like Dave and I were like, what happens if the building burns down? And I'm like, you know, we have insurance on stuff, but at the same time, I know our audience is so awesome that if they heard that our building burned down, we could run a Kickstarter and they'd probably raise the money for us to rebuy all those armies and rebuy the painting services to get them all painted, because I just knowing our audience and how fanatical they are, not necessarily about us, but about the hobby and how much they've just shown to be supportive. You know, it would suck. It would take a lot of time, but I'm sure that we would be okay in the long run. And ironically, it would probably grow the business because it just kind of gets people so into it. It's kind of like when we shut down the store, and it doubled our Vault membership that week because people really wanted to make sure we survived. And so it's just awesome how supportive the community actually is. And that kind of goes back to the whole X-Wing thing. Not that the X-Wing community wouldn't be supportive. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you don't get that like with the board gaming community. You wouldn't get that same fanaticism to that because just because they're not as invested. Like I know Tabletop did a Kickstarter and they raised like $1.5 million to do their next season of Tabletop, but that's like with a celebrity at the head of it and a channel with over 1 million subscribers that started just 2 or 3 years ago. So clearly they have a big following, so it's not proportionate really. So yeah, I just think back years ago, like what is it, 3 years ago when I did the Indiegogo campaign for Dark Potential, all I had was a little image and an idea, and we raised $90,000. People just gave us money, even though I had no proof that I was even capable of doing it. They just had seen so many videos that they wanted to support it, and they thought it was a cool idea. And so it's just, yeah, it's phenomenal what the wargaming community is willing to do. Right. Satan's Ashtray. That's a great username. Greetings from Germany. Hi-yo, I just wanted to tell you that I'm very excited about the new Warhammer content. Up until now, I was just playing 40k, and because of my financial status, it might stay that way. But I know how awesome your videos are and how they got me to play 40k. The only thing I'm missing right now is a how to play Warhammer Fantasy, or are you waiting for the new rulebook to come out? Yeah, there's rumors of another edition coming out in the next year, so you're probably not going to see any how to play Warhammer Fantasy anytime soon. I could totally wait for that then, but then please make a how to play because I don't get the magic steps in Warhammer Fantasy. P.S. Becoming a Vault member as soon as I earn money. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you're probably not going to see how to play. Instead, you could just learn by watching the battle reports, and that kind of gives you an idea. And of course, what I would suggest for anybody trying to learn to play is to read the rule book. Well, duh, but I mean that's never going to quite get you there. And then obviously try to play the game. But if you don't have access to that, then just watching the battle reports after you've read the rule book will give you more context, and then you can go back and reread certain areas and learn it as much as you can that way. Excuse me. Slull12345. Hi, Matt. Love the site and very happy member for months now. Thank you. First, Xmas Apocalypse game would rock with all mini wargamers. Please do. We'll see about that. Second, are you going to play Dave again in 7th edition, or are you going to make him wait till 8th edition for him to get his first win against you? It's not going to happen very often. It's too stressful playing against Dave. I would really like to see a rematch, where your last one was so hilariously fun to watch. Dave's Stealing Initiative makes me laugh every time. Third, I just watched an old vid called Apocalypticon, 600,000 points, I think, and was wondering if you ever did any more and got to Best Dr. Evil Voice, 1 million points. I think that was our biggest one, and then we've canceled Apocalypticon. It was too much of a time sink. Didn't really make any money. I realized it was a fun thing for the community, but it took too much resources for that, so it just didn't make sense for us to continue it. Fourth, you guys are great. Thanks for doing such fine work. New campaign is best one so far. We'll hope you get to this one. Have a great week. Thank you. What time we got? All right, we got a little more time. Jimmy T92. Hey Matt, loving the World Engine. Keep making the great content. I'm happy to start with my hard-earned cash for this. To part with my hard-earned cash for this. Thank you. Are there any plans to design a Space Marine that has Steve's face sculpted on? I reckon a Lysander model would be a good start. Vault member for life. No plans yet. Not that won't happen. Badgerfish. I agree that an Emperor model would be cool, but I disagree that it should have rules. I know that doesn't make much sense, but it follows a very important rule of RPGs. You don't stat Cthulhu. Why? Because when you do... Stupid phone ringing. Let me just turn it off. Why? Because when you do, the game becomes about who can kill the big bad monster. The more hype and importance you give to a godlike character, the more obscure it should be, because once you give it rules and stats, it loses its mystery and awesome factor. I agree with that. I actually do. I still want the rules, because I want to use them in a campaign. But bar that, we'll just make our own rules. We'll just take some of the Primarch's rules and supercharge them, because really he's just a supercharged Primarch. I know he's way more than that, so don't worry. But rules-wise. But I agree, like, the rules and fluff never really go together. It doesn't make sense. Like, Space Marines and the fluff are all like Jedi that never die, and then you put them on the table against like a few Termagants, and the Termagants are taking them down with their first shooting attack. Like, it doesn't make sense, and that's okay. Like, the armor saves, the Space Marine Scouts have the same armor save as Imperial Guard Scions. And Necron Immortals have the same save as a Space Marine in their armor. It's okay that it doesn't make sense. There's always a disconnect between the lore and fluff of a game and the actual gameplay, because the gameplay has to be balanced, whereas the fluff and lore does not have to be balanced. So that's always going to be the change. So I'd like to see a model. I do agree with that it would take a bit of the mystery away, but I'd still like to see it. Linux Rado. Hi Matt, why don't you have a campaign featuring Captain Slaughter's rejects? That's been suggested before, and something that Dave is thinking about, so you might just see that one day. Zonwist2. Hey Matt, love these. Hope my question gets answered. I was just reading a review for my favorite book, Aragon. Have you read it? I have not. I saw the movie, which was horrible, and concluded that I wouldn't be able to read the book for a very long time. I've heard the book is really good, but after seeing that movie with that kid with those huge lips, I just knew that if I read the book, I'd be picturing him, and I just want to punch him in the face. And that's just not what I wanted to do. The movie was bad. It was a bad movie. It was horrible, horrible, bad movie. And so I've forgotten most of it now, so maybe one day I'll read the book. That's not my main question. The review I was reading said this: 1 out of 5. I was disgusted that this book had bad language in it. I can't believe this is for kids. I do not approve of saying, reading, or writing bad language. I stopped reading at this point. Now, I've read this book a lot. The only swear word that occurs is BA. My main question is, would you do the same if this happened in a book you were reading? I found this person reaction extreme, as this occurs 200 plus pages into the book. I can tolerate a bit of swearing. If I had a choice, there would be no swearing, but I can tolerate some. So I don't think I would give it a 1 out of 5 rating just for that. And I don't think I'd give it a 1 out of 5 rating if I didn't like that there was content I didn't appreciate, because that's not really accurate. It's not a 1 out of 5. Like, it's not, and that's, you rate a book or movie based on how enjoyable it was, and obviously the swearing and stuff will have a factor into that, but also maybe it would affect, I don't know. But no, I can tolerate a bit of swearing, as long as there's not too much. I get disappointed by it, but it won't necessarily stop me from reading the book. If there's a lot of it, of course it would. Doug I. Hey Matt, gotta say I have not been impressed with some of the negative responses towards some of the guest battle report participants, Zach mostly. It just seems very harsh that, as usual on the internet, people hiding behind computer screens are really big and lay into the guy in a quite personal way. I agree. I agree. These people come in, they volunteer their time, they're not being paid, they're not getting a reward. And, well, the War Machine League players get a participation award, but it hardly is enough that it merits all the time and energy they put into it. And of course, even if you lay into us, like obviously being an internet troll or somebody who's just critical for the sake of being critical is not very nice. Sure, I'll admit it, if I had to rank people who do battle reports for Mini Wargaming, he wouldn't be at the top of my list, but at least he made the effort to travel to you and participate. If I wasn't over here in the UK, I would too. Happily, however, in the comments section of Dave's Banter Bat Rep, my comment defended the guy and putting people in their places a bit is now the new most liked top comment. Yeah, I think most people aren't trolls. You just get the loud ones that make things bad for everybody else. The point I'm getting to, and I know you're not about to start policing the internet, is do you think these sort of negative reactions towards people who come in and feature on battle reports will have a negative effect on people being willing to travel to you and be on camera? Of course. Oh yeah, I'm sure there are people who have been affected by that enough that in their minds they don't really want to be in a video because they're worried about what people will say about them. So yeah, I think it definitely has an impact. How much of an impact? Obviously, it's impossible for me to know because I can't know who's not coming because of that. Even if somebody says, I'm not coming because of that, that's not 100% true, because if you flipped it and that was never there, maybe they wouldn't have come anyways. Colin Clare. Hello, Matthias. Dark Elder. That is all. Necronomicon. So, Matt, we've finally pestered you into starting fantasy again. Anyone listening who misses Dark Potential, you know what to do. That'll probably not be happening anytime soon. By anytime soon, I mean a long time. The Lord of Silence. Hey, Matt, I am just starting the... Oh, and if you're wondering why, there's a sit and talk FAQ on the subject. The Lord of Silence. Hey, Matt, I am just starting the Horus Heresy series, and thus far I have found it to be quite good. Yeah, I've heard that the first parts are good. Whilst there is some violence and low-level coarse language, it seems to be at a level I was expecting. I was wondering what you thought of the series, if you have read them. World Engine is awesome so far. Keep it up. I haven't read them at all, so I have no real input on that. I have heard that they're good, though. Blaze Heroic. Hey, Matt, thanks for... Oh.
Yeah, you got a little bit of emergency.
Oh, okay. Be right back. All right, I'm back. My wife apparently locked herself out of the house. Fun times. So I'm going to have to cut this short. I'm going to answer a couple more questions, though, and then I have to go. So she's not waiting for me right now. Don't worry. She went to pick up our son from school. She's just walking there, and then she'll come back, and we've got time to answer a couple more. What was I saying? What was in the middle of answering? Okay, Blaze Heroic. Hey, Matt, thanks for answering my previous question. You're welcome. I know you wouldn't be willing to post army lists, but would you be willing to post army colors? That's not going to happen. I'll just be honest. Just never get around to it. Mickey Levy. Hi, Matt. Re your comment that playing the game doesn't really depict the mass killing and bloodshed, and that's why it doesn't bother you. Hypothetically, if someone came into play with, say, a Khorne-themed army, where every model was covered in viscera and gore, this would be something that would make you uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that. I don't like models that are too gory or over the top, so yeah, that would definitely make me uncomfortable. If they, it's hard with battle reports because they kind of show up. Like I had somebody show up in there, they actually had some models that were unpainted because they were unaware that we had the rule that they had to be painted. And it's not like I'm going to be like, well, forget it, go home. Because these people came to play a battle report, so we have to kind of go with what they have there. If there's anything that was super bad, then yeah, I would not allow it. MadCat75, hi Matt, just wondering, I have seen that you have the Battletech miniature war game on the wall behind you when you play a battle report. Will you ever play a game of it? One day we might do a nostalgia battle report because that was the first miniature war game that Dave and I ever played. Scapo, hi Matt, happy Mini Wargaming member. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you. I would like to ask you if you think that it was a mistake in Games Workshop's part to narrow down the range of games they support, cutting out all the specialist games. I always wonder if it isn't a little risky to be concentrating on such few games. I would appreciate your opinion. No, I think it was a good idea. They know their numbers better than anybody else, and they can see where they get in return on the sales. The problem with specialist games is they can't really be done in plastic very easily because they don't sell as much. And so in plastic is really the key to being able to produce really good miniatures at a good price. And not that I'm not saying that their prices are good, but I mean good price for them, like the price for them to create the miniatures. So specialist games are a little harder. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it and make it work. It's just hard. It's just hard because the miniatures don't cross over from one game to another. Mostly don't cross over from one game to another. And so it's just hard. They can only do so much, and there's a diminishing return on investment when you start to add on those kind of things. For a small company, of course, totally makes sense to kind of hit a niche market because they're a small company. But for a larger company, it changes. The business model definitely does change. Okay, I got to end it here. I'm sorry that I got to cut this short, but I do have to make sure I can head home and unlock the door for my poor wife and 2 kids who will be with her. Thankfully, it's a nice day outside, so they can just play in the backyard until I get there. Thanks for all your questions and comments. Stay tuned next week for more Sit and Talk. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Happy wargaming.